The shattering of glass echoed through Nathan Young's penthouse office as his Italian leather shoe connected with an empty crystal tumbler, sending it careening across the polished marble floor. His frustration wasn't aimed at the innocent glassware, but at the text message glowing on his phone screen. His date for his cousin's wedding scheduled for this weekend had just canceled. In the cutthroat world of luxury real estate development, Nathan had conquered every challenge thrown his way, but finding a last-minute replacement for a high-profile family wedding where his insufferable relatives would probe into his personal life was proving to be his Waterloo. "Perfect timing as always, Vanessa," he muttered, running a hand through his dark hair as he paced beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The skyline, dotted with buildings he owned or had developed, usually calmed him. Today, it only reminded him of how much control he normally maintained in his life control that was quickly slipping away. Nathan pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Melissa, can you come in here, please?" Moments later, his assistant appeared, tablet in hand, her expression expectant. "Yes, Mr. Young. Vanessa just canceled for the wedding," he said bluntly. "I need a date, someone presentable, intelligent, who can handle my family without making a scene." Melissa's eyes widened slightly. "For this weekend, the Connecticut wedding." "Yes, the very same 4-day extravaganza my aunt has been planning for months. The one where I'll be interrogated about my personal life by relatives I see once a decade." His voice had an edge to it he rarely used with his assistant. "Sorry, I'm not upset with you. This is just inconvenient." Melissa nodded, already tapping away on her tablet. "Let me check some options." "The usual escort services, no," Nathan interrupted. "No escorts. My family would see through that immediately. I need someone real, someone who feels authentic." A thoughtful expression crossed Melissa's face. "What about a friend? Someone who isn't connected to your business circles? All my friends are business associates. You know that." Nathan leaned against his desk, loosening his tie slightly. At 35, he'd built Young Development into one of the most successful real estate empires in New York, but his personal life had taken a distant second place to his ambition. "Actually," Melissa said hesitantly, "I might have a solution. My roommate just had a breakup and canceled her vacation plans. She's taking time off work but has nothing to do now. She's smart, presentable, and honestly could use the distraction." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Your roommate, what does she do?" "She's a children's book illustrator. Freelance." "Very talented." Melissa's voice had gained confidence. "She's nothing like the women you usually date, but that might be an advantage. She feels real because she is real." "An illustrator?" Nathan couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "Would she even be comfortable in that environment?" "Claire is surprisingly adaptable. She grew up with money before her parents lost everything in the 2008 crash. She knows how to navigate those circles, even if she's not part of them anymore." Nathan considered this as he walked back to the window. His reflection stared back at him, tailored suit, carefully styled hair, the image of success. What would it be like to bring someone completely outside his world to this wedding? "Fine," he finally said. "Set up a meeting for this evening. I need to make sure she's suitable before committing." Melissa nodded briskly. "I'll arrange it. Shall I have the car bring her here, or would you prefer a more neutral location?" "The rooftop lounge at the Whitney, 7 o'clock. And Melissa," he paused, "make sure she understands what she's getting into. 4 days with my family isn't a vacation." "I'll brief her thoroughly," Melissa promised, already texting as she left the office. Nathan turned back to the skyline, wondering what he'd just agreed to. He had built his life on calculated risks, but this felt different, personal, unpredictable, everything he typically avoided. Claire Fuller stared at her phone in disbelief. "Mel, you can't be serious. A billionaire needs a fake date to a wedding, and you volunteered me. This isn't a Hallmark movie." Melissa laughed, her voice tinny through the speaker. "It's perfect timing. You were just complaining about spending your vacation alone in the apartment after Ryan canceled your trip." Claire flopped back onto her bed, surrounded by half-finished illustrations for her latest project. Watercolor brushes and paint tubes were scattered around her, a riot of color against the white comforter. There's a difference between not being alone and pretending to date a billionaire at a fancy wedding, Claire retorted. I don't even know this guy. You know of him, Melissa countered. Nathan Young, he's actually a decent boss, just intense, focused. He needs someone normal who won't embarrass him in front of his family but also won't try to trap him into a real relationship. Claire snorted. And that's me. The perpetually single illustrator who spends most days talking to fictional characters and animals. That's exactly why it's you. You're genuine, Claire, and after what Ryan did, wouldn't a weekend at a luxury estate in Connecticut be better than moping around our apartment? Claire sighed, touching the edge of a watercolor painting a bear and a little girl having a tea party in the forest. Her deadline was coming up, but the work was nearly done. And Melissa had a point about the moping. The breakup with Ryan 3 weeks ago had left her wounded, especially when he'd immediately started dating the woman he'd assured Claire was just a colleague. What would I even wear to something like this? She asked, a hint of interest creeping into her voice. He'll take care of that. The man has connections to every high-end designer in New York. That's weirdly transactional, Claire murmured. It's practical. Look, just meet him tonight. If you hate him, say no. He's meeting you at the Whitney at 7. Wear that navy dress with the silver earrings. Claire glanced at the clock. 5:30 p.m. Mel, that's in 90 minutes. Better hurry then, her roommate chirped before hanging up. Claire stared at the ceiling for a long moment, considering what she was about to do. Meet a billionaire. Potentially agree to be his fake date for a 4-day wedding. It was insane, and yet she found herself heading for the shower. The rooftop lounge of the Whitney offered a panoramic view of New York City as the setting sun painted the skyline in shades of amber and gold. Nathan arrived 15 minutes early, securing a corner table that afforded both privacy and a spectacular view. He ordered a scotch neat and scanned the entrance with practiced casualness. At precisely 7 o'clock, a woman stepped onto the rooftop, pausing to take in the view. Nathan recognized her immediately as Melissa's roommate, though she looked nothing like he'd expected. He'd imagined someone more artistic, bohemian, perhaps. Instead, Claire Fuller was polished but understated in a simple navy dress that complemented her auburn hair, which fell in loose waves past her shoulders. As she approached, directed by the host, Nathan stood. Their eyes met, and he was struck by the directness of her gaze, curious, appraising, but without the calculation he was accustomed to seeing in women introduced to him. Mr. Young, she said, extending her hand. I'm Claire Fuller, Melissa's roommate. Her handshake was firm, her smile cautious but genuine. Nathan, please, he replied, gesturing to the seat across from him. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Well, it's not every day I get summoned by a billionaire, she said with a hint of humor in her voice. Though I should warn you, I'm still not entirely convinced this isn't an elaborate prank. A server appeared and Claire ordered a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. Nathan watched her, reassessing. There was something refreshing about her lack of pretense. Not a prank, unfortunately, he said once they were alone again. Just a genuine predicament. Has Melissa explained the situation? Claire nodded, a hint of amusement playing at her lips. You need a fake girlfriend for a family wedding because your real date canceled. It sounds like the plot of a romantic comedy. I assure you, my family is far less charming than any fictional counterpart, Nathan replied dryly. The wedding is my cousin's. 4 days at my aunt and uncle's estate in Connecticut, beginning this Friday. It will be intense. Claire took a sip of her wine, studying him over the rim of her glass. Why me? Surely there are plenty of women in New York who would jump at the chance to be on the arm of Nathan Young for a weekend. The question was blunt, and Nathan appreciated that, precisely because of that. I don't want someone with ulterior motives or who's starstruck by wealth. My family is perceptive, they'd see through it immediately. And you think they won't see through us? Claire challenged. Nathan leaned forward slightly. I think you're intelligent enough to pull this off without overacting or trying too hard. We don't need to convince them we're madly in love, just that we're dating and getting to know each other. Claire nodded slowly, considering his words. What would this entail exactly? Besides showing up and making small talk. attending the welcome dinner Friday night, various activities Saturday, the ceremony and reception Sunday, and a farewell brunch Monday before departing, Nathan explained. We'd need a basic backstory of how we met, something plausible but not overly complicated, and you'd need appropriate attire, which I'll arrange. I have clothes, Claire said automatically. Not for this, Nathan replied, not unkindly. This is old Connecticut money mixed with new tech wealth. The dress code is specific, Claire raised an eyebrow. And in return for playing arm candy for 4 days, Nathan bristled slightly at the term. You wouldn't be arm candy, you'd be my date. As for compensation, I'm prepared to pay you $10,000 plus cover any expenses related to the weekend. Claire nearly choked on her wine. $10,000 for a weekend? 4 days, Nathan corrected. And yes, your time is valuable, as is your discretion. Claire set down her glass, her expression suddenly serious. I'm not an escort, Mr. Young. I never suggested you were, he replied, matching her tone. This is a business arrangement between adults, no romantic or physical expectations whatsoever. Claire studied him for a long moment, and Nathan had the distinct feeling he was being evaluated in a way few people dared to assess him anymore. I have some conditions, she finally said. Nathan gestured for her to continue, intrigued. First, I'll accept necessary clothing, but nothing extravagant or that feels like you're dressing me up like a doll. Second, I won't lie about who I am or what I do. If your family asks about my work as an illustrator, I'm going to tell them. Third, she hesitated, then continued with determination. I won't be controlled. If I'm uncomfortable with something, I'll let you know privately and you'll respect that. Nathan considered her terms. They were reasonable, more than reasonable, actually. Most people would have simply named a price. Agreed, he said. I have one condition of my own. We present a united front. Any disagreements remain private. My family can be challenging. They'll exploit any perceived weakness. Claire nodded. Fair enough. Then we have a deal. Nathan extended his hand across the table. Claire hesitated just a moment before taking it. We have a deal. Her hand was warm in his, the touch lingering perhaps a second longer than necessary. Nathan felt an unexpected flutter of anticipation, not for the wedding, but for the company he'd be keeping. So, Claire said, breaking the momentary tension, tell me what I need to know about the Young family dynasty. Nathan's mouth curved into a half smile. How much time do you have? The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Nathan arranged for a stylist to meet with Claire at a private showroom, where she selected several outfits that satisfied both Nathan's need for appropriateness and her desire to feel like herself. To his surprise, she had excellent taste, choosing pieces that were elegant without being flashy, and she politely but firmly rejected anything that made her uncomfortable. They met again on Thursday evening for dinner, this time at a quiet restaurant in the West Village, to finalize details and establish their backstory. So we met through Melissa at a charity event your company was sponsoring, Claire recited, taking a bite of her pasta. We've been dating for 3 months, taking things slowly because we're both focused on our careers. Nathan nodded, impressed by her attention to detail. And you're currently illustrating a children's book series about a bear named Benjamin, Claire supplied. Benjamin Bear's Big Adventures. The 3rd book comes out in September. Is that real? Nathan asked, genuinely curious. Claire smiled, and he noticed how it transformed her face, making her green eyes brighten. Yes, it's real. I've been working with the author for 2 years now. Benjamin is quite popular with the kindergarten crowd. I'd like to see your work sometime, Nathan found himself saying. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Claire. Really? She asked, her tone slightly skeptical. Children's book illustrations don't seem like your usual interest, Nathan shrugged. I appreciate talent in all forms. Claire studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'll show you when we get back. She took a sip of her wine. So, what should I know about your family that isn't in the dossier Melissa prepared? Nathan couldn't help but chuckle at that. She gave you a dossier, complete with photos and relationship dynamics, Claire confirmed with a grin. Very thorough, your assistant. There's a reason she's irreplaceable, Nathan agreed. He leaned back, considering the question. My cousin James, the groom, is actually decent. We were close as kids before our paths diverged. He went into environmental law while I chose real estate development. Sounds potentially contentious, Claire observed. It can be, Nathan acknowledged. My Aunt Victoria, his mother, is the real challenge. She's never approved of my business methods and takes every opportunity to remind me that the Young family used to be known for philanthropy rather than profit. And your parents won't be there, Nathan said shortly. They live in France now, semi-retired. Claire seemed to sense his reluctance to elaborate and change the subject. Any ex-girlfriends I should know about, potential awkward encounters? Nathan shook his head. No one from the family circle. I've kept my personal and family lives separate. Until now, Claire pointed out. Until now, he agreed. Their eyes met across the table, and Nathan found himself wondering what it would be like to bring someone like Claire into his world for real, someone thoughtful and direct, without pretense. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of dessert, a dark chocolate soufflé they had decided to share. As Claire took her first bite, her expression of delight was so genuine that Nathan found himself smiling in response. What? She asked, catching his expression. Nothing, he replied. Just thinking this might not be as challenging as I anticipated. Claire raised an eyebrow. Don't jinx us, Nathan. The wedding hasn't even started yet. The drive to Connecticut on Friday afternoon was surprisingly comfortable. Nathan's driver navigated the sleek black SUV through weekend traffic while Claire gazed out the window at the changing landscape, from urban density to leafy suburbs to the rolling countryside of southwestern Connecticut. Nervous? Nathan asked as they turned onto a tree-lined private drive. Claire smoothed a non-existent wrinkle from her emerald green sundress. A little, she admitted. It's been a while since I've been in this kind of setting. You'll be fine, he assured her, and was surprised to realize he meant it. In the past few days, he'd observed Claire's quick wit and social adaptability. She wasn't easily flustered or intimidated. What about you? She asked. Dreading the family interrogation, Nathan grimaced. Is it that obvious? Only to someone paying attention, Claire replied with a small smile. Before Nathan could respond, the estate came into view, a sprawling Georgian manor house set against meticulously landscaped gardens. Staff members were already directing arriving guests, and a fleet of luxury vehicles lined the circular driveway. Wow, Claire murmured. Melissa wasn't exaggerating about the scale of this event. The Youngs never do anything halfway, Nathan said as the car pulled to a stop. Ready. Claire took a deep breath and nodded. Ready. As they exited the vehicle, Nathan instinctively placed his hand at the small of Claire's back, a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. She glanced up at him, a flicker of something unreadable passing across her features before she smiled and leaned slightly into his touch. They had barely crossed the threshold into the grand foyer when a voice called out, Nathan, you finally made it. A tall man with sandy hair approached, his face split in a genuine smile. James Young, the groom, pulled Nathan into a brief but enthusiastic hug before turning his attention to Claire. And you must be the mysterious girlfriend we've been hearing about, James said warmly, extending his hand. I'm James, the poor soul getting hitched on Sunday, Claire laughed, immediately at ease with his friendly manner. Claire Fuller, congratulations on your wedding. Thank you, we're thrilled you could both make it. Nathan's been frustratingly tight-lipped about you. Nathan slipped his arm around Claire's waist. Just trying to keep something for myself, James. You know how the family gossip mill works. James rolled his eyes good-naturedly. All too well. Speaking of which, Aunt Victoria is holding court on the South Terrace. You might want to get that particular introduction out of the way early. Straight into the lion's den, then, Nathan murmured. James clapped him on the shoulder. I'll catch up with you both later. Duty calls. Apparently I need to approve some last-minute flower arrangement change or the world might end. As James hurried away, Claire turned to Nathan with raised eyebrows. He seems nice. James is the best of the bunch, Nathan agreed. Unfortunately, he's not the one we need to worry about. They made their way through the house, which was buzzing with activity as staff and family members prepared for the evening's welcome dinner. Nathan nodded to various relatives, making brief introductions as they passed, but kept moving toward their destination. The south terrace overlooked immaculate gardens that stretched toward a distant pond. Seated in a commanding position was a regal woman in her 60s, silver hair swept into an elegant updo, observing the proceedings like a general surveying her troops. "Aunt Victoria," Nathan said as they approached, "you've outdone yourself with the arrangements." Victoria Young's piercing blue eyes, so similar to Nathan's own, assessed him coolly before shifting to Claire. "Nathan, we were beginning to wonder if you'd make it." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "And this must be the girlfriend Melissa mentioned." Claire stepped forward with a warm smile, taking the offered hand. "Claire Fuller, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Young. Your home is absolutely stunning." Victoria's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Thank you, dear. It's been in the Young family for 4 generations. Do you have an interest in historical architecture?" "I do, actually," Claire replied. "My grandmother restored Victorian homes in Massachusetts. I spent many summers helping her research period-appropriate details." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly in approval. "How interesting. And what is it that you do now, Claire?" "I'm a children's book illustrator," Claire answered without hesitation. Nathan tensed slightly, waiting for his aunt's dismissive response, but Victoria simply nodded. "Creative work. Challenging in its own way, I imagine." "It is," Claire agreed, "but very rewarding." Victoria turned her attention back to Nathan. "Your cousin tells me you've been expanding into sustainable development projects, a surprising direction for young development." Nathan felt Claire's questioning glance but kept his expression neutral. "The market is evolving, Aunt Victoria, so are we." Was all Victoria said, but her look was speculative rather than disapproving. "Well, you should get settled. You're in the East Wing, 3rd floor, dinner is at 7, cocktails at 6. Taking the dismissal for what it was, Nathan guided Claire back into the house. "That wasn't so bad," Claire murmured once they were out of earshot. "She's just warming up," Nathan warned. "But you handled her perfectly." Claire looked at him curiously. "Sustainable development. That sounds unlike the Nathan Young I've read about in the business pages." Nathan hesitated, then shrugged. "It's a new initiative, still in the planning stages." Claire seemed about to press further, but they had reached their room, a spacious suite with a sitting area, bedroom, and luxurious bathroom. Their luggage had already been delivered. "I asked for separate accommodations, but Aunt Victoria is old-fashioned," Nathan explained, suddenly awkward. "I'll take the sofa." Claire assessed the large king bed and then the relatively narrow sofa with skepticism. "Don't be ridiculous. That bed is big enough for 3 people to sleep without touching. We're adults, Nathan, we can share." Nathan was surprised by her practicality but relieved. "If you're sure." "I'm sure," she said firmly, moving to unpack her suitcase. "So what's our strategy for tonight's dinner?" Nathan watched as she efficiently organized her belongings, struck by how easily she seemed to adapt to new situations. "Just be yourself," he found himself saying. "That seems to be working surprisingly well." The welcome dinner exceeded even Nathan's expectations in terms of opulence. The Young family and the bride's relatives dined under a clear tent, adorned with thousands of twinkling lights and cascades of white flowers. A string quartet played softly in the background, and uniformed servers glided between tables with precision. Claire, wearing a midnight blue cocktail dress that made her green eyes appear even more vivid, charmed everyone at their table from Nathan's elderly second cousins to James's future in-laws. She asked thoughtful questions, remembered names, and laughed genuinely at their stories. Most importantly, she subtly steered conversations away from potentially awkward subjects whenever Nathan tensed beside her. "How long have you two been together?" asked Margaret, James's soon-to-be mother-in-law. 3 months, Claire replied, her hand finding Nathan's on the table. The gesture felt so natural that Nathan found himself lacing their fingers together without thinking. "Though we've known of each other longer through mutual connections." "Only 3 months and already attending family weddings," Margaret observed with a knowing smile. It must be serious. Nathan opened his mouth to provide their practiced response, but Claire spoke first. "We're taking things one day at a time," she said, her eyes meeting Nathan's with unexpected warmth. "But I will say that each day has been better than the last." Nathan felt something shift in his chest, a strange tightening that wasn't altogether unpleasant. The way she looked at him made it easy to forget this was all pretense. "Well, you've certainly made an impression on Victoria," Margaret continued. "She rarely takes to newcomers so quickly." Claire's expression revealed genuine surprise. "Really? I wasn't sure she approved of me." "Oh dear, if Victoria didn't approve, you'd know it," Margaret assured her with a laugh. "She has many talents, but subtlety isn't one of them." The conversation moved on, but Nathan remained distracted by the weight of Claire's hand in his. The subtle scent of her perfume, something light and floral, and the ease with which she navigated his world. By the time dessert was served, he found himself wondering what it might be like if this weren't an act. As the evening wound down and guests began retiring to their rooms, Nathan and Claire walked back to the house under the starlit sky. The summer night was warm, a gentle breeze rustling through the gardens. "You were incredible tonight," Nathan said quietly. "Everyone was charmed." Claire smiled up at him. "It wasn't difficult. Your family is interesting. Even Victoria has a certain magnetism." "That's one word for it," Nathan replied with a chuckle. They paused at the edge of the garden, the house's windows glowing warmly in the distance. "Seriously, though, thank you. This could have been much more uncomfortable." Claire turned to face him, her expression thoughtful in the moonlight. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you so tense around them? They clearly care about you, even Victoria in her own way." Nathan was silent for a moment, weighing how much to reveal. "The Youngs have always had expectations, traditions. My father was supposed to take over the family foundation, but he wanted more. He started Young Development against my grandfather's wishes, focusing on profit over philanthropy. I followed in his footsteps." "And that disappoints them?" Claire asked softly. "They see me as continuing the corruption of the Young legacy," Nathan admitted, surprised by his own candor. "The irony is, they're quite happy to enjoy the wealth that comes from it." Claire studied him with those perceptive green eyes. "And the sustainable development Victoria mentioned. Is that your attempt to bridge those worlds?" Nathan looked away. "Maybe it's complicated." Claire didn't press further. Instead, she simply slipped her arm through his. "We should head in. Big day tomorrow." That night, as they lay on opposite sides of the enormous bed, Nathan found himself more aware of Claire's presence than he'd expected. The soft sound of her breathing, the faint silhouette of her form in the darkness, it was strangely intimate in a way that had nothing to do with physical closeness. "Nathan," she whispered, "are you awake?" "Yes," he replied. "Tomorrow will be better, you'll see." In the darkness, Nathan smiled. "I think I already am." Saturday dawned clear and bright, the estate buzzing with wedding preparations. After breakfast, the wedding party and guests split into groups for various activities. Nathan and Claire found themselves assigned to a morning of lawn games followed by a picnic lunch. "Croquet, really?" Claire murmured as they approached the immaculately trimmed lawn where several sets were already being played. Nathan grimaced. "A Young family tradition. My grandfather was apparently a champion. And you?" Claire asked with a teasing smile. "Terrible," Nathan admitted. "I lack the patience for it." Claire laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Well, prepare to be humiliated. My dad was obsessed with croquet. We played every weekend during the summer." True to her word, Claire proved to be unexpectedly skilled, navigating the wickets with precision while Nathan struggled to make any progress. His cousins were delighted by his competitive frustration and Claire's unassuming expertise. "Where did you find her, Nathan?" His cousin Peter asked during a break. "She's nothing like your usual type." Nathan watched as Claire chatted easily with James's fiancée, her face animated, auburn hair glinting in the sunlight. "She's one of a kind," he replied honestly. The picnic lunch that followed was a casual affair set up under large oak trees. Claire and Nathan found themselves sitting with James and his fiancée Emma, along with a few of their closest friends. "So how did you two really meet?" Emma asked, leaning forward conspiratorially. James says Nathan never brings anyone to family events. Claire glanced at Nathan, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, curious to hear how she would handle this. We met through his assistant, Melissa, who's my roommate, Claire began. But the real connection happened a few weeks later. I was sketching in Bryant Park and Nathan sat down nearby for a business call. He was so focused he didn't notice me, but I was drawing him the whole time. Nathan blinked in surprise. This wasn't part of their prepared story. When he finally ended his call and noticed what I was doing, he was intrigued rather than annoyed, Claire continued, her eyes meeting Nathan's with a warmth that felt genuine. He asked to see the sketch, then asked me to dinner. The rest just happened naturally. It was a beautiful lie, simple and believable. Nathan found himself wishing it were true. That's actually romantic, Emma said with approval. Who would have thought Nathan Young had it in him? He's full of surprises, Claire replied, her hand finding his again, a gesture that was becoming second nature. The afternoon continued pleasantly, with Claire and Nathan gradually relaxing into their roles. By the time they returned to their suite to prepare for the evening's rehearsal dinner, something had shifted between them, a comfort level that hadn't existed before, punctuated by moments of genuine connection. As Claire emerged from the bathroom in her dress for the evening, a floor-length burgundy gown that draped elegantly across her shoulders, Nathan felt his breath catch slightly. "You look beautiful," he said simply. A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Thank you, you clean up pretty well yourself." Nathan adjusted his tie, studying their reflection in the mirror. They made a striking pair, her warmth complementing his more austere appearance. "Ready for another round of family interrogation?" he asked. Claire stepped closer, reaching up to straighten his already perfect tie. The gesture was intimate, her fingers brushing against his chest. "I think we make a pretty good team, don't you?" Nathan looked down at her, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "Better than I expected," he admitted quietly. For a moment, neither moved. Nathan could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the subtle tension that hadn't been there before. Claire's eyes searched his, a question in their depths that he wasn't sure he was ready to answer. The moment was broken by a knock at the door, a staff member sent to inform them that cars were waiting to transport guests to the rehearsal dinner venue. As they made their way downstairs, Nathan found himself wondering if Claire had felt it too, the subtle but unmistakable transition from pretense to something that felt dangerously like reality. The rehearsal dinner was held at an exclusive country club 10 minutes from the estate. Under crystal chandeliers, the wedding party and close family members enjoyed a lavish meal while various people stood to offer toasts and well wishes to the couple. Nathan found himself increasingly distracted by Claire's presence beside him, the way she listened intently to each speaker, the genuine emotion in her eyes during particularly touching moments, the soft curve of her smile when she found something amusing. He'd hired her to play a role, but there was nothing performative about her responses. "Would you like to say something, Nathan?" James asked, breaking into his thoughts. As my oldest friend and favorite cousin put on the spot, Nathan hesitated, then rose to his feet. Public speaking had never intimidated him. He regularly addressed boardrooms and investor meetings, but this was different. Personal. "James and I grew up more like brothers than cousins," he began, his gaze finding his cousins across the table. "Which means I've had the unique privilege of watching him become the extraordinary man he is today." Nathan paused, aware of Claire's encouraging smile. "What always struck me about James was his absolute certainty about what mattered most to him. While I was chasing success, James was chasing meaning. While I was building structures, James was building relationships." Nathan felt a sudden emotion constrict his throat. "I've always admired that about you, James. And in Emma, you found someone who shares that priority, someone who sees the world as you do, as a place to make better, not just to conquer." He raised his glass. "To James and Emma, may you continue to remind the rest of us what truly matters in this life." As he sat down, Nathan was surprised to feel Claire's hand squeeze his beneath the table. He glanced at her, taken aback by the moisture in her eyes. "That was beautiful," she whispered. The dinner continued, but Nathan found himself increasingly aware of a discomfort that had nothing to do with his family and everything to do with the woman beside him. He'd hired Claire to help him maintain appearances, to shield him from his family's scrutiny. Instead, he found himself more exposed than ever, not to his relatives, but to himself. Later that night, as they prepared for bed in companionable silence, Nathan found himself watching Claire as she removed her earrings at the dresser. The simple, domestic act felt strangely intimate. "You didn't have to say those things about my speech," he said suddenly. Claire turned to him, her expression puzzled. "What things?" "That it was beautiful. You don't have to stay in character when it's just us." Claire's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "Do you think I'm that good an actress, Nathan, that everything I say and do is calculated, isn't it?" he challenged, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation but unable to stop himself. "This is a business arrangement. You're being paid to be here." The moment the words left his mouth, Nathan regretted them. Claire's expression shuddered, the warmth vanishing from her eyes. "Yes, I am," she said coolly. "Thank you for the reminder." She turned away, gathering her night clothes. "I'm going to change in the bathroom." When she emerged, Nathan was already in bed, staring at the ceiling. Claire slipped under the covers on her side, keeping a careful distance. "Claire," he began, the silence unbearable. "It's fine, Nathan," she interrupted. "You're right, this is business. We should both remember that." But as the room fell into darkness, Nathan found himself acutely aware that whatever was developing between them felt like anything but business. The problem was, he had no idea what to do about it. Sunday morning brought with it a flurry of activity as the household prepared for the main event. Claire left early to join the other women for a pre-wedding breakfast, leaving Nathan alone with his thoughts. He used the time to catch up on work emails, trying to distract himself from the tension that had developed between them. When it was time to depart for the ceremony, Nathan made his way to the front of the house where cars were waiting to transport guests to the church. He spotted Claire immediately, standing near a fountain in a deep teal dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a different era, elegant, timeless. Their eyes met across the driveway, and after a moment's hesitation, she walked toward him. "Good morning," she said, her tone polite but distant. "Sleep well?" "Not particularly," Nathan admitted. "Claire, about last night, we should get going," she interrupted, nodding toward the waiting cars. "Wouldn't want to be late." The church was a historic stone building dating back to the 1800s, its interior transformed by cascades of white roses and soft lighting. Nathan and Claire found seats among the family section, maintaining a careful distance that felt unnatural after the easy physicality of the previous days. As the ceremony began and Emma walked down the aisle to James, Nathan found himself unexpectedly moved. His cousin's face was transformed by joy as he watched his bride approach a pure, undisguised happiness that Nathan realized he'd never experienced himself. Beside him, Claire was equally affected, discreetly dabbing at her eyes as the couple exchanged vows. Without thinking, Nathan reached over and took her hand. She tensed momentarily, then relaxed, allowing the contact. "I'm sorry," he whispered as the couple recited their promises to each other. "For what I said last night." Claire's eyes remained on the ceremony, but her fingers tightened around his. "Later," she murmured. The reception was held in an elegant tent on the estate grounds, transformed into a garden wonderland with hanging floral installations and thousands of twinkling lights. After the wedding party's entrance and the first dances, dinner was served at round tables draped in ivory linens. Nathan and Claire were seated with cousins and their partners, the conversation flowing easily despite the lingering tension between them. To anyone observing, they appeared to be the perfect couple, attentive, in sync, occasionally exchanging knowing glances or brief touches. The performance was flawless, even as both were acutely aware of its artifice. As the band started playing and couples moved to the dance floor, Nathan turned to Claire. "Dance with me." She hesitated, then nodded, allowing him to lead her among the other dancers. As his hand settled on her waist and hers on his shoulder, their bodies moved together with surprising harmony. You're a good dancer, she observed, the first personal comment she'd made all day. Years of mandatory cotillion lessons, Nathan replied with a wry smile. One of Aunt Victoria's non-negotiables. Claire's expression softened slightly. It paid off. They moved in silence for a moment, the music washing over them. I meant what I said earlier, Nathan finally said. I'm sorry for last night, it was unfair and untrue. Claire looked up at him, her expression guarded. Which part? All of it, he admitted. Implying that you were just acting, that your reactions weren't genuine. I know better. Do you? Claire challenged quietly. Because I'm not sure you do, Nathan. I think you're so used to transactional relationships that you can't recognize a real connection when it's right in front of you. The words hit with precision, finding a vulnerable spot Nathan hadn't realized was exposed. Before he could respond, the music changed to a faster tempo, and other couples converged around them, breaking the moment. Claire stepped back. I need some air, she said, turning toward the tent's open side that led to gardens illuminated by strategically placed lanterns. Nathan followed, weaving through guests until they reached a secluded spot near a reflecting pool. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of roses from nearby beds. Claire, wait, he called. She turned, arms wrapped around herself despite the mild evening. What do you want from me, Nathan? You hired me to play a role, I'm playing it. What more do you need? That's just it, he said, stepping closer. It doesn't feel like a role anymore, at least not to me. Claire's expression was a mixture of wariness and something else, something that looked dangerously like hope. What are you saying? Nathan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated by his inability to articulate what he was feeling. I'm saying that something has changed. Between us, you feel it too, I know you do. Do I? Claire challenged. Or am I just an excellent actress, as you implied last night? You're not acting, Nathan said with sudden certainty. Neither am I, not anymore. Claire studied him for a long moment. And that scares you? It wasn't a question, but Nathan answered anyway. Yes, it does. The honesty of the admission seemed to surprise her. Her posture softened slightly. Why? Nathan turned to gaze at the water, gathering his thoughts. Because it wasn't supposed to happen. Because in my world, relationships are strategic, they serve a purpose. Business partnerships, social alliances, even marriages often have practical motivations. And this doesn't fit that pattern, Claire supplied softly. Nathan looked back at her. No, it doesn't. He took a step toward her. I didn't plan for you, Claire Fuller, for how easily you'd fit into my life, for how much I'd want you to stay in it. Claire's eyes widened. Nathan. I know it's too fast, he continued, unable to stop now that he'd started. I know this weekend isn't real, but what I'm feeling is, and I hope, that you might feel it too. Claire was silent for so long that Nathan began to wonder if he'd completely misread the situation. Then she moved forward, closing the distance between them. I do feel it, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, and it terrifies me, not just because it's fast, but because our worlds are so different. You live in penthouses and boardrooms, I draw talking bears for a living. Nathan reached out, taking her hands in his. I've spent this weekend watching you navigate my world with more grace and authenticity than people who were born into it. You're not intimidated by it, you see through it. And that's what you want, Claire asked. Someone who isn't impressed by your wealth or status. I want someone who sees me, Nathan said simply. Not Nathan Young, billionaire developer, just Nathan. You do that somehow. Claire's expression softened, a small smile tugging at her lips. You're not so hard to see when you let your guard down, like that speech you gave at the rehearsal dinner. That was the real you. Nathan moved closer, his hands releasing hers to frame her face gently. So where does this leave us? Claire looked up at him, her green eyes reflecting the soft glow of the garden lights. I don't know, this isn't exactly a conventional beginning. I think we're past conventional, Nathan murmured, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. What would you suggest then? Claire asked, her voice slightly breathless. We could start with this, Nathan said, and then he was kissing her. The moment their lips met, any remaining pretense vanished. Claire's arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer as she responded with an enthusiasm that matched his own. The kiss deepened, becoming something more profound than either had anticipated. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Claire's expression was a mixture of wonder and wariness. "This is crazy," she whispered. "We barely know each other." "Then we'll get to know each other," Nathan replied, his hand still cradling her face. "Properly, no pretending, no roles, just us." Claire searched his eyes. "You're serious, completely." A slow smile spread across her face. "Okay, okay," Nathan repeated, his own smile growing. "Let's see where this goes," Claire clarified, "but slowly and no more paychecks." Nathan laughed. "Deal." As they rejoined the reception, something had fundamentally shifted. The casual touches, the shared glances, the way they moved together, all of it was real now. No longer a performance for others, but an expression of something new and fragile growing between them. Later that night, as they lay facing each other in the darkness of their room, Nathan reached out to brush a strand of hair from Claire's face. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Claire caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. "That I came here expecting to play a role and somehow ended up finding something I wasn't looking for." "And what's that?" she smiled in the darkness. "You." 6 months later, Nathan stood in Claire's small apartment, surrounded by illustrations of Benjamin Bear's latest adventure. The character's expressive face beamed from various sketches pinned to a large corkboard, while finished artwork was carefully arranged on a drafting table. "These are amazing," he said, admiring the detail and emotion Claire managed to convey in her deceptively simple style. "Benjamin looks like he's having the time of his life at the ocean." Claire looked up from her work, a smudge of blue pastel on her cheek. "That's the idea. Benjamin's beach day has to capture the excitement of a first ocean experience." Nathan moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Like someone else I know who had never been to the Maldives until last month." Claire laughed, leaning back against him. "That trip was slightly more luxurious than Benjamin's day at the local beach." "Only slightly," Nathan teased. The past 6 months had been a journey of discovery for both of them, finding balance between their very different worlds, learning each other's habits and histories, building something real from what had started as pretense. Nathan had been surprised by how naturally Claire fit into his life, and even more surprised by how easily he adapted to hers. Weeknight dinners at neighborhood restaurants, Sunday mornings at local farmers' markets, quiet evenings watching Claire sketch, all of it had become as essential to him as board meetings and development projects. And Claire had embraced aspects of his world too, accompanying him to business functions where her genuine warmth won over even his most cynical associates, offering insightful perspectives on projects, even suggesting a children's library component for his latest sustainable development that had evolved into a community center. "Have you thought more about my offer?" Nathan asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. The offer was his suggestion that they move in together, specifically, that Claire move into his penthouse where he'd already cleared a room for her studio with perfect natural lighting. Claire turned in his arms to face him. "I have a counter-offer." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "What if instead of me moving into your place, we find somewhere new, together, something that isn't yours or mine, but ours from the beginning?" Nathan considered this. It hadn't occurred to him, accustomed as he was to simply acquiring what he wanted. But the idea had merit, starting fresh, creating a space that reflected both of them. "I like it," he said simply. "Any particular neighborhoods in mind?" Claire smiled, recognizing his easy acceptance for the love declaration it was. Nathan Young, billionaire developer who controlled half the luxury real estate in Manhattan, was willing to start from scratch for her. "Somewhere with character," she suggested. "History, not just another glass tower." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "I might know a few possibilities. There's a brownstone in the West Village I've had my eye on." Claire laughed. "Of course you already have properties in mind." Nathan's expression turned more serious. "I want you to be happy, Claire, wherever we end up." Claire reached up, her hand cupping his cheek. "I am happy. Happier than I ever expected to be when I agreed to be your fake date for a wedding. Best business arrangement I ever made," Nathan murmured, leaning down to kiss her. When they separated, Claire's expression was mischievous. You know, your cousin James called yesterday. He and Emma are having a one-year anniversary party this summer. Are they? Nathan said, pulling her closer. He specifically mentioned hoping to see us there, as a real couple this time. Nathan smiled. I think that can be arranged. No contract required. As they stood surrounded by Claire's artwork, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, Nathan marveled at how a desperate last-minute solution had turned into the most important relationship of his life. He'd needed a date for a wedding and found so much more someone who challenged him, understood him, and somehow made every day better simply by being in it. Claire Fuller had been hired to play a role but had instead stolen his heart completely. And Nathan Young, who had built his fortune on calculating risks and returns, had made the best investment of his life.